Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're getting into the 48 Laws of Power.
That's right.
Specifically looking at some strategies for, gaining and keeping influence, but without making it super overwhelming.
Yeah, because it's a dense book.
Exactly. You asked for the key stuff quickly, so we've pulled out some excerpts. Think historical stories, power dynamics.
And we're aiming to distill those down into, actionable insights and maybe some surprising bits you didn't expect.
Consider it your quick guide to understanding influence based on this classic, sometimes controversial text.
It's definitely a fascinating look at how power has worked, or at least how some people think it works, across history. Our goal isn't to endorse it all, but to understand it.
Right, just understand the strategies. So
Yeah.
let's jump right in. Law 6, court attention at all costs.
Visibility.
The core idea is pretty straightforward, isn't it? You need to be seen. If people ignore you, well, you don't have much power.
Pretty much. Being invisible is like being non-existent in the power game.
Think about P.T. Barnum. The book mentions how he'd sometimes just walk through town in a really distinctive new suit. And just doing that made people think, who is that? Must be someone important. It created a buzz.
It's about manufacturing that perception, isn't it? The suit wasn't inherently powerful, but the attention it drew, the questions it raised.
Yeah, it made him seem significant before he even did anything else.
And that gave him an opening.
Then there's Count Lustig, the con artist.
Oh, yeah, classic example.
He apparently cultivated this air of mystery, didn't give too much away, acted a bit aloof.
Which just makes people more curious, right?
Exactly. People were drawn to him, wanted to figure him out, be near him.
Making them perfect targets for his cons. He used curiosity as a tool. By being mysterious, he made others focus on him, not on what he was actually up to.
So it's about being conspicuous, but maybe not obnoxious. How do you find that line for, practical use?
Well, I think the key is calculated visibility. It's not just making noise. It's drawing attention strategically to things that help you, your skills, your ideas.
Intentional.
Right. It serves a purpose rather than just feeding an ego, which often just annoys people.
Okay. Let's move to Law 7. Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit.
This one always gets a reaction.
Yeah, it sounds pretty cutthroat, leveraging other people's efforts for your own gain.
The example of Louis XIV thing in Versailles is pretty illustrative here.
Tell us about that.
Well, his finance minister, Fouquet, built this amazing chateau, and Louis basically saw it, got jealous, had Fouquet arrested, and then hired Fouquet's own architects, designers, artists.
No way.
Yes, to build Versailles, making it even grander, completely overshadowing Fouquet using his own talent pool.
So he took the credit for work built on the expertise Fouquet had assembled.
Essentially, yes. It shows how you can sort of amplify your own image by directing the successful work of others.
There's another angle, too, with Joseph Dewey and the art dealer. He helped persuade Andrew Mellon to donate his huge art collection, which founded the National Gallery of Art in the U.S.
Which sounds purely altruistic.
Right, but the book suggests it also helped Duveen. His rich clients were maybe running out of wall space, facing taxes.
So Mellon's public donation, facilitated by Duveen.
Solved problems for Duveen's network and cemented Duveen's reputation as this major, influential figure in the art world.
It's a more subtle way of taking credit, isn't it? Not for creating the art, but for making the outcome happen, which then benefits you indirectly.
Strategic orchestration.
Exactly. Orchestrating success that reflects well on you. Of course, there are ethical lines here. The difference between delegation and, exploitation.
Definitely something to think about. Okay, Law 12. This one feels even more manipulative. Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim.
Yeah, this is about using occasional sincerity as a weapon.
How does that work? Like one act of honesty.
One well-placed act of seeming honesty or generosity can lower someone's guard. It makes you seem trustworthy, at least for a moment.
So they don't suspect the bigger picture.
Precisely. The book mentions the cat's paw idea in Cons.
What's that?
Where an accomplice seems totally honest and maybe even a bit naive. They gain the target's trust.
And then lead them into the actual trap set by the main con artist.
Exactly. That initial perceived honesty is key.
There's an example with Lord John Gordon and Jay Gould.
Right. Gordon apparently exposed some fake stock certificates related to Gould's railroad using handwriting experts. Seemed very above board.
Okay. So Gould thinks This guy's honest.
And then Gordon uses that trust to propose some kind of business venture, which presumably was designed to benefit Gordon immensely.
So the initial honesty was just a setup.
It appears so. It built the trust needed for the later move. It highlights how even a small dose of perceived virtue can be really effective.
But the book adds a caution, right?
Yes, if you already have a reputation for being deceitful.
Then a sudden act of honesty isn't going to fool anyone.
Probably not. It might even make them more suspicious, like, why are they being nice now? It only works if it feels like a genuine, surprising exception.
Got it. Let's shift gears slightly. Law 13. When asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude.
This feels much more pragmatic, less cloak and dagger.
Yeah, it's about framing your requests. Focus on what's in it for them.
Not just why you need help.
The example given is Athens choosing between alliances with Corcyra and Corinth. Corinth apparently appealed based on past favors, gratitude.
Appealing to mercy or gratitude.
Right. But Athens chose Corcyra. Why?
Because Corcyra offered a strategic advantage, a strong navy that would help Athens in its rivalry with Sparta. It was purely self-interest for Athens.
So the emotional appeal lost out to the practical benefit.
Often the case in these larger strategic games. Emotional pleas are less reliable than showing clear mutual benefit.
There's also the story of Yelu Chuchai and Genghis Khan.
Ah, yeah. Convincing Khan not to just destroy China.
How did he do it? Not by begging for mercy, I assume.
No, definitely not. He didn't talk about culture or compassion. He talked about money.
Money?
He pointed out how much tax revenue Khan could get from the Chinese population if he let them live and work.
Oh, practical economics. Appealing directly to Khan's interest in resources and wealth.
Exactly. He showed Khan how sparing China was actually more profitable for Khan himself, and it worked.
So the takeaway for you listening is, when you need something, really analyze the other person's motivations.
What do they want? What are their goals or problems?
And how can what you're asking for help them achieve those things?
Frame it as a win-win. That's far more persuasive.
Okay, Law 14. Pose as a friend, work as a spy.
Straightforward, but a bit chilling.
Yeah. Gather intelligence on rivals while acting friendly. The book doesn't give specific examples here, but the principle is pretty clear.
Information is power, right? Knowing your competitors' plans, their weaknesses, that gives you a huge advantage.
And pretending to be friendly is a way to get that information.
It lowers their defenses. People are more likely to let things slip, reveal vulnerabilities, if they think they're talking to a friend, not a rival.
So it's about understanding the information flow, the hidden currents, in any competitive situation.
Absolutely. It's strategic intelligence gathering, knowing the landscape. The friend disguise is just a tactic to access that intel.
Interesting. Okay, moving to Law 18. Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is there less.
This seems counterintuitive, maybe. Don't we build walls for safety?
Right, but the law argues that cutting yourself off actually makes you more vulnerable.
How so?
Well, you lose vital information. You don't know what's happening outside your walls. You become an easier target because you're isolated, predictable.
And another touch.
Exactly. The example is Qin Shi Huangdi, the first emperor of China. Toward the end, he apparently shut himself away in his massive palace complex.
Trying to be safe, presumably?
Yeah, but the result was he lost control. People around him started making decisions, plotting. He was cut off from the reality of his own empire.
So the isolation backfired. It created a power vacuum right under his nose.
It's interesting, though, because another law, Law 16, talks about using absence to increase respect, making yourself scarce.
That's a really important distinction. Law 16 is about strategic, temporary withdrawal, like stepping back briefly to increase your value or create mystique.
Okay.
Law 18 warns against prolonged, total isolation, which cuts you off completely and weakens you. It's the difference between a calculated pause and permanently walling yourself off.
Got it. Okay, Law 29, plan all the way to the end.
Foresight. Thinking long term.
Yeah, not just about the next move, but the move after that and the consequences down the line.
It's about seeing the whole chessboard, not just the piece in front of you.
The book mentions Bismarck before the Austro-Prussian War.
Prussia eventually won, but Bismarck was apparently cautious beforehand.
Why?
He saw that the Prussian army wasn't fully ready. He anticipated that rushing in could lead to disaster, even if there were short-term pressures to act. He was thinking about the ultimate outcome, not just the immediate battle.
So he held back until the conditions were right for the final victory.
Something like that. His ability to see the long game, the potential negative consequences of acting too soon, was key.
And the law contrasts this with impulsive people who just react.
Right. Those who can't see beyond the immediate gain or slight often stumble into traps they didn't anticipate. They win the battle, but lose the war, so to speak.
So every action needs to be weighed against the ultimate goal.
That's the core idea. Long-term strategic thinking.
All right. Law 36. Disdain things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge.
This one's more psychological, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like it. How to deal with stuff you want but can't get, or attacks against you. The advice, just ignore it, act indifferent.
How does that work as revenge?
By ignoring it, you refuse to give it power over you. If someone attacks you and you don't react, it sort of deflates their attack. If you obsess over something you can't have, you just make yourself miserable.
So indifference signals strength, or at least control.
I think so. The example is Pietro Aretino. He apparently made up this aristocratic background for himself.
Okay.
And when his actual, more humble origins were revealed by rivals.
He must have been furious or embarrassed.
You'd think. But apparently, he just completely ignored it. Acted like it didn't matter, didn't even acknowledge the revelation.
And that took the sting out of it.
Exactly. By refusing to engage, he made it seem unimportant. He controlled the narrative by simply not participating in theirs.
It's like saying, your attack means nothing to me. That can be very frustrating for the attacker.
And it stops you from wasting energy on things you can't change or don't really matter.
Right. Focus your attention where it counts. Don't let unattainable things or petty attacks drain you.
Okay, next. Law 40. Despise the free lunch.
Ah, the classic, no such thing as a free lunch.
Pretty much. Be wary of things offered for free. Why?
Because they almost always come with hidden strings, obligations, expectations, a sense of debt.
So accepting free things can compromise your independence.
That's the warning. Paying your own way keeps you free from those subtle entanglements. You're not beholden to anyone.
But the law also mentions generosity as a sign of power.
Yes, that's the flip side. Being able to be generous strategically without expecting an immediate return that projects strength.
Like, you're so secure, you can afford to give things away.
Exactly. It can attract allies and build influence. But it's strategic generosity, often done from a position of power, not the desperate acceptance of a free lunch that creates obligation. It's about understanding the dynamics of giving and receiving.
Okay, makes sense. Finally, Law 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes.
This is about legacy, right? Following someone really famous or powerful.
Yeah, it's tough. The original act, the first person, often seems more brilliant, more groundbreaking.
You start to measure up.
The book uses Louis XV, following Louis XIV, the Sun King.
Big shoes to fill.
Huge. And despite inheriting this incredible kingdom, Louis XV's reign is often seen as, well, less impressive, overshadowed by his predecessor.
The comparison is almost inevitable, and usually unflattering unless you achieve something truly monumental yourself.
So the law suggests you need to create your own path, not just follow.
Pretty much. You have to establish your own identity, your own source of power, your own achievements. Trying to just replicate the past rarely works.
It mentions Pericles in Athens. He apparently started with one political group.
The established aristocratic party, yeah.
But then he switched to the People's Party. Why?
To differentiate himself, to build his own power base, separate from the existing structures and legacies. He couldn't just inherit power effectively. He had to create his own source of support.
So he deliberately stepped out of the existing great men's shoes to make his own mark.
Exactly. He forged a new path to power rather than following the old one. It underlines the need to find your own way, especially if you're following someone significant.
Wow, okay. So wrapping up this deep dive into these specific laws, we've seen ideas about making yourself visible.
Leveraging other people's work, sometimes controversially.
Using honesty selectively. Appealing to self-interest.
Gathering information like a spy, the dangers of cutting yourself off.
Planning for the long haul. Ignoring things you can't have.
Being wary of free gifts and the challenge of following greatness. It's quite a mix, but you can see threads connecting them. Observation, strategy, understanding human nature, maybe the darker sides of it sometimes.
It definitely gives you a different lens for looking at interactions, doesn't it? So, the final thought for you listening. As you think about these laws, which ones jump out at you? Do you see them playing out anywhere?
Yeah. How does understanding these maybe hidden dynamics change how you see things happening around you, or even how you approach your own goals?
The 48 laws offer this framework for ambition and influence. The question is, what insights do you take away?
Something to definitely mull over.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.